Britain's at risk of descending into mob rule, says the Prime Minister, as violent and intimidatory protesters disparage the nation's democratic processes. Here's an example of these tensions, and pro-Palestine activists came during a Chorley council meeting on Tuesday.
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine! Why has no motion been put to this chamber? We were told that if they would be happy, the Labour group would be happy to put a motion to this chamber. Why has that not happened?
Because it's Chorley, not bloody Gaza! Jews! Go on!
I'm joined now by my panel, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun, Ryan Saby, political commentator Candice Holdsworth, and journalist at The Telegraph, Steve Edgington. Good evening to all of you. I think that probably sums up the state of the nation, doesn't it? Because it's bloody Chorley, not Gaza. Unbelievably, I think that guy now is being investigated for some kind of stramash that happened after all of that. People pushing and shoving. I mean, you and I, Ryan, have talked about this before. Every time anybody from the Labour Party goes out anywhere, they just get harangued and harassed and shouted at by people from their own side who don't think they're doing enough.
Yeah, no, happens all the time. And I think this is one of the key things that Rishi Sunak was trying to get to, this mob rule.
Yeah.
Elected officials, those, whether they're MPs, whether they're councillors, serving up and down the country, that when they are carrying out their duties, whether it's in Parliament, whether it's walking to and from Parliament, local democracy there, whether in the council chamber, they have to be able to do their job without fear or favour. They have to be able to, cast their vote on whatever policy it be and not be intimidated.
Exactly. Because they're going to spend this £31 million on something. You would imagine not much of that will trickle down, Candice, to the Chorley local council meeting, would you?
Well, yes, and also, I mean, it is you probably shouldn't have strong-armed her out of the room.
Right.
You probably shouldn't do that. But it is true that it is Chorley and it's not Gaza. And it's just taking over now. I mean, various councils all around the world, actually, have passed resolutions about this.
Yeah.
And you think, well,
My favourite was Preston.
Well, what about, yes, local taxpayers in that region? I mean, does that matter to them? Is it relevant to their lives?
Really?
No.
No, it's really not. But again, this is the problem we've got, Stephen, isn't it? I mean, we were talking just before about asylum figures and the fact that, more and more people are coming into the country. You were writing today about how Home Office insiders are telling you that, they're basically rushing everything through, none of which is really helping the cause of mob rule on the streets. I mean, I've been talking about this since last October, that, the police have got the powers to stop these marches from doing what they're doing, disrupting the nation, but they're just not using them.
I think the police are getting their calls all wrong on this. As you say, they aren't policing these marches properly. But then at the same time, they are investigating people like Lee Anderson for his comments.
Yeah.
I thought that we lived in a democracy where MPs are allowed to express their views without fear and favour of being investigated by the police for a so-called hate crime.
Right.
And
it's got nothing to do with the police.
And you make a really good point about mass immigration as well. I think these mobs and these hate rule and so on, they're all a result of having a multicultural society where conflicts in foreign countries have become a dominant domestic political issue in Britain, and this is a completely novel thing.
Yeah, somebody said to me the other day, and I don't know how true it is, that some of the things that we seem to be now adopting is basically Pakistani politics. And you take a look at Pakistani politics and you see what they do. You see what happens to people like Imran Khan. He gets locked up. He gets his legs shot at. These are people who are not used to dealing in a democratic way with people that they disagree with.
And there's some people like, see, Harriet Harman, of all people, actually wants to surrender completely. Ministers attacking her
It'll
this
just
week.
be easier to work from home. Well, I said this the other day. I mean, if we're spending £31 million of taxpayers' money on protecting our MPs, should we not be told who's making threats?
You would have thought so. And that £31 million, I think it really has to go. Can you imagine, we're 6 months, 7 months out from a general election. Can you imagine what it's going to be like if this conflict is still going on? It could be really unbearable.
Yeah, well, the Rochdale by-election's going on as we speak, so we can't really talk about that, but that's going to be, whatever the fallout from that is going to be fascinating. And, there's going to be more by-elections, there's going to be more hustings. We've got the mayoral election in London coming up. It's not going to get any quieter or any safer for people.
No, it isn't. And, the thing is as well, look, people do need the right to protest. That is a sacred right that we have in this country. It is judging, however, when it becomes political intimidation.
I don't think these are protests anymore.
No, turning up at
they're
some
events.
Well, it's interesting because we were just talking about the police, and they were saying that actually, yes, they can stop a protest if it becomes intimidating.
Right.
Turning up at someone's house is intimidating.
Yeah.
I can't believe there was even any confusion about that.
Right.
I mean, that is designed to intimidate someone.
course.
That's personally targeting
And even
them.
threatening to do it is intimidating.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to punch somebody to be charged with assault. You know, you don't have to physically hurt somebody to be charged with threatening behaviour. You know, all of this is threatening behaviour. All of it is designed to put MPs off getting controversial about Gaza.
And we know that if it was Tommy Robinson outside Parliament screaming that we're going to lock them up there, he would be shut down and arrested immediately.
Yeah.
But the fact that these are Islamist protesters, people supporting Gaza and so on, I think they get some kind of weird protection from the police because they're worried to police these protests properly. So, as you say, there's a huge disparity here between how the police are acting in terms of who are protesting and which side they're on.
Yeah.
And a line has been crossed. You look outside Keir Starmer's house, you had Just Stop Oil, you had a protester actually go to his house with a letter to deliver a message to him. And they're pulling it all over social media, all over Twitter. It is far too much. That definitely crosses the line.
Of course it does.
What's the social media elements as well in all of this as well? Are people doing it as well to put it on social media? They're looking for those viral moments.
Yeah, they are. Well, we saw Greenpeace going to Rishi Sunak's home, didn't we? Luckily, he wasn't there. But nevertheless, you know, going to somebody's house, I think should be punishable by quite a serious you know, penalty.
On that, it was incredible that they actually got on top of the house. This is the Prime Minister's house. How did that even happen?
Or issuing a death threat. There should be absolutely no tolerance for issuing death threats to people.
No. I mean, but the intimidation isn't going to go away. I mean, I said this yesterday, that we're going to probably see, Stephen, sort of some kind of street warfare going on because the police, now that they've let it go for so long, are going to find it very difficult to get any of it back. And the protesters themselves have said, we'll do what we like, as they did last Saturday at London Tower Bridge, just blocked it off.
I think the problem that MPs have is that when the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, talks about death threats and so on, and he doesn't want another MP being killed, quite rightly, I think, you know, David Amess obviously was killed by an Islamic extremist. However, by giving in to the extremists, by giving in to the mob, you're sort of encouraging them to continue their extremist actions. And when Parliament acquiesced and Lindsay Hoyle changed the procedures and changed the rules in order to give in to this mob, I think that's given them a kind of green light to continue their terrible actions.
Well, because they also know that if there are any arrests to be had, if you, for example, those 3 girls that were done for putting parachutes on their shoulders, they were all let off on the grounds that, oh, well, you know, it was a good cause, they didn't really threaten anybody. You know, they actually put a Hamas parachute, effectively, as a symbol of their hatred towards the Jewish race.
Yeah, and you look at cases like that, you look at cases of Just Stop Oil, whether it's Extinction Rebellion, there seems to be this feeling that if you do protest, you know, there may be some sort of peaceful element to it, but if you are brought before the court, the juries may well just let them off.
Well, they will.
Not just the juries, but this judge, Tan Ikram. I mean, he let these people off for supporting a terrorist group, Hamas, because he said that... Well, he didn't let them off. He said that he wouldn't let them go to prison and so on.
Yeah.
But he said that the emotions were high.
Yeah.
But when he's faced with similar cases of people saying racist or offensive things on WhatsApp, he does send them to prison. So I think there's...
That did happen. Absolutely right. Let's finish up with a bit of Angela Rayner, as I like to call her. Her story still rumbles on. Harry Cole, still at The Sun there, says tonight, funny how the conversation turns to how hideously complex UK tax code is once a Labour politician falls foul of it. This is a story that everyone from Labour said would go away on Monday. It was mischief-making by the Man on Sunday, mischief-making by Lord Ashcroft, who's written a book about it. But it's not, is it?
You wouldn't have thought so, but having spoken to Keir Starmer's spokespeople over the last few days, they say they have full confidence in what she has said.
That's bad news for her, isn't it?
Exactly. You just wonder at what point do they try and get rid of her when they can't, you know.
Well, the bad news for her is that Dan Needle, the guy who really has given the needle to Michelle Mone over her tax affairs, he's now taking it on board, and he says tonight on Twitter, did Angela Rayner fail to pay capital gains tax on her house? He says the short answer is maybe.
This is the thing. There's a question about whether she owes possibly up to £3,500, a bit less than that, or nothing at all. But I think that it just creates this imagery of the fact that, you know, what she needs to answer these questions. She could be Deputy Prime Minister, you know, by the end of the year.
And she can't just keep ignoring it. You know, she is also, you know, the anti-Thatcherite queen, but she's taken advantage of a Thatcherite policy. She wants to shut it down so that nobody else can take advantage of a Thatcherite policy, and she doesn't want to tell us why. And it's not about the numbers; it's about whether or not you dislodged yourself from a tax that you should have paid, and you lied about something on an official document. That's quite serious.
She may well get quizzed about this tomorrow. She's making a speech up in the north.
Yeah.
And there is a moment for questions from the media and the audience, and you just wonder whether someone is going to ask her that question. It has to be asked.
It does. Well, we look forward to that. Look forward to that indeed. Thank you, guys. We'll see you again very shortly.